We're calling the meeting to order now. Thank you all for coming on this nice, cool summer day. And we'll start with roll call.
Ambrosia Thompson. Lisa Pierce. Kenna Lee.
Present.
Zeno. Phil Carter.
Present.
Emmett.
I'm here.
Councilmember Maurer.
Here.
And Alex.
Here.
Okay. So we have a quorum, and absent today, I believe, is Joshua Somanai and Mayor Rich. Am I missing anyone?
Oh, that sounds right to me.
Okay.
I'm just trying to log into the meeting, but I'm going to give up. So review of action items from last meeting. I believe that Phil was going to continue incubating bike parking ideas. That's what I have down for action items.
They're definitely incubating.
Perfect. So do we have any comments from the public today regarding items not on the agenda? Yay.
This may come up later just in the staff report. I wanted to talk a little bit about the process just launched for the downtown study that was funded from the, I think, $280,000 Caltrans grant. And my understanding that there are 4 things that they're looking at. You can correct me if I'm wrong, John. One is the possibility of doing a truck bypass. We have a lot of big trucks that come through town, and it'd be southbound trucks, I think in particular, that would be the bypass. And the other is looking at widening sidewalks. Another is of course, the two-way street that we've talked about before. And then I believe there might be one on lowering speed limits. If not, I sure hope there is. And then just general, what can be done on pedestrian improvements along the way. Go ahead, John, correct me.
Yeah, no, I think the reduction in speed is basically just traffic calming down the Main Street corridor.
Right. And this committee sent a letter before to the Planning Commission outlining the concerns around the changes in two-way streets. And, you know, it's part of the process. It really wasn't brought up much in the first meeting in terms of it having to be one of the priorities that's examined. But it is in the documents for the grant that it is a priority project. And I want to just reiterate some of the concerns that the reason we changed from two-way to one-way. The 2 biggest were there were a lot of traffic accidents at the major intersections. In fact, I think, Lisa, maybe you can correct me, 37% reduction in traffic accidents after we switched from two-way to one-way. So that's pretty substantial. The other kind of non-quantitatively examined item that was a real concern at the time was all the side streets. So we're taking a lot of traffic from people trying to avoid the stoppage in downtown. And so what are we talking about? Florence, Murphy, Valentine. And we have 2 schools right there that are, and of course, Regal. People would jump out on Regal too. It's a major corridor for both pedestrians and bicyclists into town. Maybe, I don't know, a third to a half of all the activity flowing into town, what makes our town walkable, goes through those corridors. And my concern is that we're going to end up impacting those corridors that are dependent on safe streets to get to downtown. So I want to make sure that as we go forward, those impacts are analyzed, both the impacts on the side streets as it might pertain to pedestrian and bicycle safety getting into town, and the general safety expected increase in accidents. So these are two things that I hope will be examined heavily by the consultants, and there should be adequate funding to do that kind of examination of what can we expect to see. I guess I'm also reacting to some of the comments about how or I should say the Planning Commission views traffic in town as a big asset, and traffic where you don't have traffic, it can be a dead downtown. Yeah, sure, I'll agree with that, but I don't think we're ever at the risk of being a dead downtown with no traffic when we have two highways that intersect. It's just not going to happen. And we don't, at least I don't want to see a place where I'm sitting on a sidewalk and the cars are basically stopped there, and all the exhaust is coming to all the people that are supposedly enjoying and walking to downtown and sitting there. Stopped cars, dead traffic is not a vibrant downtown. Thank you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to piggyback on that a little bit, what Steve just said. The biggest advocates for changing to the one-way system were the people who lived on the side streets, who were really tired of all the traffic coming in. It was unsafe for especially bikers. So, and that really improved dramatically after the one-way switch. And it was voted on twice, and it passed twice. It passed more the second time than the first time.
So I just like to follow up with a member of the public. Are you asking this committee to take up an item, or are you informing the members of the committee about the opportunity to come to meetings?
First and foremost, it's an opportunity to come to meetings and pay attention to the process. But I mentioned this to staff earlier and to the consultants that it would be good if we could try to get a sense of how much of this $280,000 is being spent on examining the two-way traffic idea, and just some kind of visibility into, is it being an engineering time suck of the $280,000? So that's a request, and we could look at potentially formalizing that as a request from the committee to the Planning Commission.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Zena.
Yeah, to connect this with climate change, I wonder whether you have any information about the effects of idling, cars idling. Is that part of the study?
I couldn't answer that question. I don't know how they'll handle that. Maybe staff could.
Through the chair, if you would like, staff could provide some comments at this time.
I think we're going to move on to our agenda today. No, it's okay. It's just, I know this is an important topic, but I think our transportation committee is all present today and can hear the concerns as well as a majority of the members of the committee. So, but feel free to add into your planning report, which is coming up any second now, right after all of our statements of conflict of interest. All right, moving on to the planning report.
In terms of the planning department report, we've got a number of items. One, John can provide more explanation of this, but regarding the STG project that was just mentioned, the downtown Main Street project, there are stakeholder meetings that are underway now. And part of the reason for the stakeholder meetings really is to do what was just suggested as a public comment, to really listen to the public, understand what is working, what may not be working, and to help refine the scope of work for the study. So these comments are absolutely appropriate and will be filtered in to the work of the consultant team. John might want to mention a little bit more about upcoming stakeholder meetings. Would you like to do that?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and do that right now. So our next stakeholder meeting is scheduled for July 16th from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. And that's going to be located at the police department's conference room. So that is on Laguna Parkway. I know the committee sent a list of potential stakeholders to staff, and that was distributed to the consultant. And I believe some of you, I did see a few of you at the first stakeholder meeting. And the second stakeholder meeting, as I mentioned, is next Tuesday from 2 to 3. So if you were unable to make that first one, we would invite you to that meeting. Again, this is the very early kind of kickoff stage. There will be additional public outreach and events and stuff like that throughout the entirety of this project. And as part of that stakeholder kickoff meeting, the kind of phases of the project was discussed to those members there. And I'm happy to answer any other questions that the committee might have.
I'm wondering if we went to the first one, do I assume that we don't need to go to the second one, or we should not go to the second one?
Correct. It's up to you if you'd like to go to the second meeting. It's essentially going to be the same topics and discussion points. Nothing new will be introduced at that second stakeholder meeting. It was just an opportunity there was a poll that was sent out that kind of, indicated which days of the week worked for most people. And there was not a clear date that worked for everyone. So that's why we had two separate meeting dates, because obviously we wanted to make sure that as many people could attend as possible.
So on that topic, I'm not sure if I read all the correct emails, but I did not get an invitation to anything that did not occur during working hours. So is there an opportunity for stakeholders that have full-time jobs that they can't leave in the middle of the day to take part in this process?
Yeah, I would say submitting comments to staff and the consultant team would probably be the best solution, because it is. I understand where you're coming from.
So my question is, who is invited to these meetings? Is this open to the general public?
Yes. So the general public, we did invite some of the members from the Downtown Business Association because they would be directly affected, or either in good or bad from this project. And then also some stakeholders that participated as part of the SDAT report and the core project that were previous studies from prior years. So as many stakeholders as staff knew of, and then also working with those groups and providing additional stakeholders.
So was the chamber invited, Mariah Volk?
Yes.
Okay. And so members of the public could simply show up and attend?
Correct.
And what has been our outreach to the general public to notify them of these stakeholder meetings?
Those have been, I believe, posted on the website, the city's website, for those stakeholder meeting dates.
Any social media, Facebook postings, outreach of that kind that you're aware of?
I don't believe any of the social media ones were available. Sometimes it's with the limited running of the newsletter, it's sometimes difficult to get that out.
Thank you for that.
Right. Thank you for that update about the process, because that is of great interest to members of this community.
Are council members, is it okay for a council member to participate or just go and witness these meetings?
In terms of a council member going, yes, that would be permissible. The idea, though, is that in terms of process, the scope of work that was prepared and adopted by the City Council for this project really used the stakeholder groups as a way of reaching out to the public, as John has described. And then the check-ins would be with the Planning Commission. So the Planning Commission is the regular check-in through the process with the stakeholder process going throughout. And then ultimately the city council is going to get a draft plan and a draft environmental impact report or draft environmental report for its actions. So the intent really was, I mean, it's open, as we've said, it's open to the public, but the intent was to work with stakeholders and the planning commission primarily, but open to the public.
So will a stakeholder meeting be recorded?
No.
No.
Okay. And so comment to my fellow council member here, we should coordinate to find out, get direction from city manager about whether we should be in attendance. So we'll figure that out. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Continue on.
Okay, we have more to report. We had a very productive team meeting this morning on the Canopy project. Representatives of the Canopy project and key staff members that are going to be involved in actually reviewing plans and working with that project as it moves from the entitlement phase to plan review and construction. We're all in attendance. And John, do you want to talk a little bit more about that meeting?
Yeah, so the gist of that meeting was the Canopy wanted to make sure that their product that they're going to be delivering to the city is at the standard that the city's looking for, and that, you know, there's not inherent delays as far as, you know, items missing or things like that. So the meeting was to get a general consensus on what is the city looking for as far as their documents go, you know, what is typically missed when we get a building permit package submittal, because there's always something that gets left out, whether it's a title report or, you know, a simple signature here and there. And then also kind of providing us with a roadmap of their future submittals, because there are quite a few. They have a tentative map that needs to go through and have final adoption by the city council. And then there's also some inclusionary housing requirements that's part of the project. So there's some legal review in that. So having kind of a step-by-step breakdown and when they anticipate having those documents to the city for review. They're kind of looking at the end of this month to submit their site development plans to the city, and with the goal of having kind of, you know, September as a rough estimate for their month to have their building permits submitted and in review for the city, and then also having their final map on a future calendar agenda for the city council in either September or October. So trying to, you know, get a lot of their permit stuff ready by the kind of beginning of fall this year, so that there's an opportunity to start construction maybe within this calendar year before the rain gets, if it does come this year, before it gets too wet out there. So.
I thought it was a very productive meeting. There are a lot of moving parts, and so to have all of the staff, the key staff there that are going to be working on the project through implementation, and then their team, and we asked that they really provide us with a step-by-step detailed list of all the next steps that are going to be required through implementation for staff review. And as John has mentioned, there are quite a few. The site plan, the improvement plans, the building permit construction drawings, the BMR, below market rate units and agreement, and it goes on and on and on. So we really wanted a complete list, which is due to come back to staff for review. And then we're planning to have regular meetings every 2 weeks with the team, just to make sure that we have a complete and accurate list with target dates for implementation, and we stay in good communication through the project and its implementation. So I thought it went well this morning. Yes.
Can I ask something about it? So I don't see it on the calendar, this meeting coming on. And I'm on the-
meeting? The stakeholder
Yeah, I don't see it on the calendar, so maybe you can double check that and add it to the calendar.
Great, thank you. We will. Another item is there's going to be a town hall meeting at the community center tomorrow evening at 6 o'clock. It's an in-person meeting. It's regarding the city's budget. It's an extremely important town hall meeting. The other night, last night, there was a Zoom only meeting that I thought went extremely well. It was moderated. Staff was in attendance. The moderator, of course, maybe 100 or so participants, lots of questions, lots of responses, I thought a good interaction and information providing and engagement. And there's an opportunity again tomorrow night at the community center at 6 p.m. for a similar presentation. Where is the city in terms of its budget? What are some options? And to receive comments and allow for people to ask questions of staff. So I look forward to that meeting tomorrow night at 6 p.m. again. In terms of something, yes, sir.
I don't see the town hall on the calendar. No, it's.
Town hall meetings, if you look under town hall.
The city calendar, I don't see it.
Sorry, I think it should be listed under town hall meetings.
I found it last night under City Festival.
No,
Yes.
I don't see the calendar.
But this is just the news.
Yeah, city meeting calendar. That's where people look for. So maybe you can make it a little bit more consistent.
Okay, thank you. We'll work with that. Thank you. On a kind of a lighter topic, you have 2 committee positions for youth committee positions, and they've been vacant for some time, as I understand it. We just received an application from a young person who's interested in climate and climate change and wanting to become involved and educate, work with her peers and share her interest and knowledge, and is interested in this position. So we'll be preparing that and bringing that to the city council for consideration in the near future. So that's exciting. And
Very exciting. And if you can keep us informed so that hopefully one of us can be there to support her
okay,
during her interview.
that sounds great. And, in terms of maybe another topic we've been discussing and still for the council to work with and decide ultimately, but in terms of moving forward with the committees, boards, and commission in terms of reorganization, that continues to move forward. And there will be a formal recommendation to the full council, and then action on that as part of the budget process. So we're still working with that. The idea generally, as we've shared with you and received feedback and comments from you, is that in terms of the Climate Action Committee and the Public Arts Committee, kind of looking at fewer meetings that are staffed, but fewer meetings in terms of trying to balance and redirect some of staff time to work on other projects that are deferred, and also to work on some of the projects coming up. We have the Barlow Hotel application that has come in. The other night, the city council approved a development agreement for Hotel Sebastopol. So there are a number of projects in addition to the grants we've been talking about. People often think about grants and it's, oh, great, you got a grant, but they forget about the RFP, request for proposals, the hiring of the consultant, the managing of the consultant, the staff reports, and then also working with the granting agency in terms of all of the requirements to satisfy the grant in terms of the closeout report and whatnot. So the staff has, like, all staff here have a lot on their plate. So the idea is to try to, how do we balance these various needs? So that's something we continue to work on in terms of the committees, boards, and commission, and the council will, as part of the budget process, decide in terms of reorganization. A staff recommendation is going forward to look at consolidating, merging the design review board and tree board with the planning commission, and then also looking at PAC and CAC and looking at fewer but staffed meetings to make sure that staff can provide the support you all need, and that the information that you're generating is fed back into the organization. So that's yet to be determined by council, but that is going to be moving forward. And
So
yes.
you're giving us, I know we've discussed this
Yes,
at length previously,
yes, we have.
but you're giving a vague, you're saying less meetings, fully staffed, and specifics would be helpful
Sure.
for us to
I
understand.
can do that.
And also for us to be able to respond to.
Sure. When I say fewer meetings, I apologize. Fewer meetings in terms of your body, the recommendation really is bi-monthly. And in terms of staff and technology support, the bi-monthly would be less staff, less technology support, because you would have fewer meetings. Does that help?
So there were several elements in the original discussion. So I'd just like to review to clarify what all those elements are.
Sure.
There would be what you're recommending, the staff is recommending an every other month 2 hour staffed for the full 2 hours with Zoom, without Zoom?
With Zoom.
And, okay,
So we would have recorded meetings. That's correct.
recorded but not live streamed.
Correct.
And public participation by in-person only.
Correct. That's correct.
Does anyone have any questions about this? Yeah.
So, I'm wondering why there's still 3 people from the planning department and our technician. I think that we can kind of saying for a long, long time, we don't really need so many people. Oh, I'm sorry. We don't need to take up so much of the planning department's time with having 3 people. And so it's, I guess I'm just kind of curious how that process is going.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'd be happy to respond to that. I think you know that I'm interim and new, and so I'm attending these meetings really more to come up to speed. But in terms of what would be going forward is that the director, the person in this position, would not be attending all these meetings. They would be shared. So John in his position and the director would share these meetings. So there typically would be the planning technician, but in terms of these meetings, there would be sharing. So this is kind of an interim situation more for me to get up to speed a little bit in terms of meeting all of you and understanding some of the issues here, but it would be shared, and so there wouldn't be this level of staff support.
And my understanding from this committee, and please throw things at me if I'm wrong, was that our official request was that the meetings continue monthly with staff, planning staff only there for the first half of the meeting. Will that be included in the staff? Will this committee's request be included in the staff report to council?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yes. And I think, unless, John, you have something else? Okay, thank you. Is there a question? Sure.
Is the need for recording, is that a Brown Act need? Like, what is the actual, okay. Because it doesn't really pertain to our, but if we need it for legal reasons or whatever, that makes sense.
We do need it for legal reasons. I mean, I think you've seen that the minutes are really action minutes to a large extent. So again, the idea is to provide a record of your meetings, and as others would need to know what occurred, the recording would be providing the level of detail I think necessary.
I think this is debatable, legal.
Well,
I mean, it's not. I don't think that's settled legally as for a recommending body to require a recording as the form of minutes, but in the state of California. But
You're
I understand
right. There are options.
that yeah, there are options. But I just don't want our committee members to think that's the only option. But historically, we have not been good minute takers, I will confess.
Yeah, just to clarify, I don't see this as a Brown Act issue.
No.
I see it as a transparency issue. So I think just because Brown Act has very specific requirements, not Brown Act transparency. Thanks.
I would agree with both of you. I mean, the intent here is really to assure that there's information about your meetings, the conduct of your meetings, and the minutes that I see. And I understand they're very limited. So it is important to have a recording.
Yeah, either a recording or a commitment to better minutes and a plan for which none of us have committed to ever. So thank you for that comprehensive report. Does anyone have any questions for planning department before we move on?
So the danger of Zoom bombing is not there anymore. And there was staff set aside to deal with Zoom bombing. So I wonder how that is going to work. Is there less staff, like only one person? Because the Zoom bombing is out of the way.
The Zoom bombing is you're referring to, hopefully, in terms of safety, safeguards, is being addressed. It's extremely unfortunate. I mean, I have experienced it here and elsewhere, and you know, it's traumatic, I think. So the staff, the city is looking at trying to address the security, I'll call it security, in terms of trying to avoid the Zoom bombing. It's obviously very, very unfortunate.
But I think the direct question was in the recording only format with that you're proposing for this committee, we wouldn't be concerned about security because there's no public participation via Zoom
I'm
other
sorry,
than watching the
I
recording.
didn't clearly
Is that,
understand.
Yeah, and then,
That's correct. Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't.
and then earlier, the staff present was partially motivated by the problem of Zoom bombing. So if that is going away, maybe we need less staff present and we could meet every month.
Yeah, you know, I think that as the staff moves forward, as the city moves forward with this concept, the idea is to really look at maximizing the use and efficiency of staff. There's really no intent whatsoever, as I tried to describe earlier, to overstaff these meetings. The idea really would be to look at what staff is needed to provide adequate support, but certainly there's plenty of work that the staff could be focused on elsewhere. And so the idea would not be to have somebody here that does not need to be here.
Question. Has there been a financial comparison between this board meeting once a month versus meeting with less staff versus meeting monthly with the full staff?
Yes, you know, I did a spreadsheet myself and spent quite a bit of time on it. Susie helped me with the spreadsheet format, which I needed help on, which was terrific. But I spent quite a bit of time kind of looking at, you know, options and staffing levels and cost. And yes, there has been. And actually,
could you tell us what the financial difference is, how much it costs?
I don't have that information directly in front of me, but I can give you some just general ideas. It's not so much cost. It's not necessarily a cost issue when I think of staff time, because I did break out in terms of billing rates, standard billing rates for staff time, what that would be. It's more, I think, more in terms of hours that the staff could then use for other work. And the other work is, you know, for example, working on reimbursement projects, working on grants, development projects that are reimbursable. There are a number of projects here that have been delayed or deferred because there isn't staff time to do zoning amendments, et cetera, et cetera. So there's quite a bit of deferred work, and there's also the grant administration. But to get to kind of a number or numbers that you could work with, in terms of looking at, say, a situation where the design review board and tree board and planning commission would merge, and looking at your body, the climate action committee and the public arts committee meeting bi-monthly, once every other month. The savings in terms of staff time, and I did make adjustments as we discussed earlier so that there wouldn't be this level of staffing. This would be shared. John in his position and the director would share this. But roughly somewhere around 200 to 220 hours of staff time. I came up with about 216 to be specific, but I would say, you know, roughly 200 hours of staff time could be saved that then could be redirected to other projects. So when you think about the grants, for example, in grant administration, when you think about some of the deferred projects, there are a whole list of zoning amendments that have been tracked by the staff here. There's the sign code, tree code, sign ordinance, tree ordinance, SB 9 local ordinance, just a whole variety of things that could be done, maybe should be done, and improved grant administration.
It sounds like you're talking about, and I thought 216 hours specifically for only this committee. That's how much
No,
saved.
I'm not.
Yeah, you're bundling.
I'm bundling.
Okay.
So what I said
Yeah,
was,
I think our question would be more
well,
specific to this body.
I don't have that information in front of me, but in terms of bundling, as I described it, I described a bundle. It would be about 216 hours or so save time.
So I hear you saying that we don't want to overstaff these meetings. I feel like we've always overstaffed these meetings right from the start, way overstaffed. I feel like we don't need any planning commission, anybody from planning here for all the meetings. I think we could meet, we could get a lot done without any staff time. And I hear that there's so many important things for the planning department to focus on. And while I appreciate hearing all the reports and, all the details about the canopy project and all that stuff, I feel like it's not really why we're here, is to hear about all the things that are going on in the planning department. I am grateful, but I also am so mindful of that it's taking time away from your jobs to report to us. So I think Kenna sent out a survey. We responded to the survey. We don't want to use the city's money and resources. We just want to meet. That's my take.
So my question is really, I understood the hours comparison, but I think the question that Councilmember Mara was focusing on was looking at staff time commitment. How does the meeting every month with limited staff, an hour or whatever it was this group committed, how does the cost of that compare to meeting every 2 months with full staff? It seems like the staff time would be equivalent. So is it equivalent, or is there savings to the city in terms of staff time by meeting every other month? There may be other reasons, I understand, why staff might be recommending the every other month, but I think the focus is, does it save staff time to meet every other month?
It does save staff time to meet every other month, for sure. There's no question about that. I mean, you have half the meetings, and I'm not quite.
But you have half the meetings, but the proposal from this committee was that the meeting wouldn't require, if they met monthly, they wouldn't require staff to be present for the entire meeting.
Understood. I wasn't quite there yet. In terms of bi-monthlies, for sure. In terms of meeting every month, but with less staff, then less staff time, you still need to think about things like the agenda preparation, the distribution of agenda, the website. I think that probably a lot of people don't understand or underestimate what it takes to put on a meeting. So Susie, for example, in her role, coordinating with the committee, our committee members in terms of putting together the agenda with the associate planner, doing the website, doing the minutes. Granted, they're action minutes. There's no question about that. Anytime that there's a staff report, the research, et cetera, for a staff report takes time. So there's quite a bit of preparation leading into a meeting. There's the attendance, but the attendance is a part of it. There's the preparation leading into the meeting, there's the attendance, and then there's the follow-up. So yes, there could be time saved. And then also there's, trying to kind of be the conduit staff. Again, this is unusual. I've already said that. But in terms of a conduit between your committee, the city manager to council, and just the community, that communication flow is important to have that. And ultimately, it's ultimately up to the city council in terms of how the city council would want to structure this. But in terms of a staff recommendation, the idea of having staff support to assure that communication, to assure that the agendas are prepared, minutes are taken, et cetera, staff reports and research are there to back you up. And then also in terms of, Brown Act, et cetera, there is an aspect of that as well in terms of just, kind of coordinating these meetings. But again, ultimately it will be up to the city council.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to this group, and I do want to move on from this topic, but I think it would be helpful to this group because this group has shown a lot of willingness and intent to contribute to the process of trying to create less burden on the city staff, both in terms of time and on the city in terms of money. If there was a little bit more specifics about quantification of it takes, an average of this much for prep and this much for follow-up for each meeting, or just something so that instead of you don't understand how much time this takes, we're told how much time it takes, and then we can do our own thinking it through when we're making our recommendation to council or making our plea to council. We want to be asking for the thing that makes the most sense, not the thing necessarily that we think we want. Right. So that would be my request to planning, is that maybe we could be provided with a little bit more detail around the specifics around time and money that are specifically for this group. I don't think this group sees itself as a corollary or an equivalent to a public arts committee. And so I think we have big plans for the future, so like saving it. So I think that would be helpful to us to get a little bit more specifics rather than being told that we don't know the specifics, because we don't. So help us out.
So we have prepared specifics. So I don't have those specifics in front of me. So I'm trying to give you ballpark numbers.
I totally understand and hate when I get asked a question at a meeting that I don't have the answer in front of me. So my apologies. I think we're going to pass it over to council report at this time.
All right, Sandy Maurer, anything to contribute, or shall I leap into it? Okay. Much of what might be of interest to this group has already been mentioned by our interim planning director. I will mention that on July 2nd, the CIP was approved, and help me out here. I always think of it as CIP. What does that stand for? Someone?
Capital Improvement Plan.
Thank you very much. Capital Improvement, there you go. Capital Improvement Plan was approved, and this is the multi-year plan that lays out large infrastructure projects for the city. Every year, the city council is presented with an updated CIP, and it shows the projects for this upcoming fiscal year and which ones have been funded and which haven't, and then it goes forward an additional 4 years. Councilmember Maurer might be able to help me in identifying whether there are any specific projects. Yes, there was a bicycle project that was of specific interest to the public when we were talking about it. I think that's probably the key project on the list coming up. There were some intersection projects. Those are the two that come to mind, and either Councilmember Maurer or planning might be able to contribute. Councilmember Maurer, did you want to chime in here?
I brought the budget book, so I can
smart.
tell you. Just heads up, the budget, we're going to be reviewing the budget. There's a draft proposed budget on the table right here. This is the paper version right here, but there is an online version. And we're going to be discussing this at the next meeting, July 16th, starting at 4 o'clock. So that's earlier than normal. Usually we meet at 6. So in terms of the CIP budget, there is at Bodega Avenue at the city limits on the west end, they're looking at putting guardrails. At 116, there'll be enhanced crossings at Burnett, Keating, Hutchins, Walker, Taft. Those are pedestrian crossing enhancements. And there'll be of like an initial survey or plan for Covert Lane on Zimper and Covert. That's across from Fandy's over there, yeah. And then there's more work on Sunset Johnson. And there's future projects, but those were some of the bike and pedestrian. Oh, there's also going to be, I can't remember what she called it. It's not a full plan, but what they do is they do a plan and then use that plan to apply for grants. So they're looking at the area from on Bodega from Regal Road to Atascadero Creek. So they're going to do like a mini review of that and then possibly submit that for a grant. I have some more about the budget, but do you want to go ahead and finish?
Great. So the great thing is Sandra Maurer is on the budget committee, so we get the inside info here. The other points before we get into more on the budget, which is super important, is might be of interest to this committee to know that the City Council approved the inclusion monthly in City Council, once a month, City Council packets, full department reports. So that would give an update similar to what we hear today that is specifically to planning. You could look at those and see what each department is doing. That's shared with the public moving forward. That was a recommendation from staff that I think will be very much appreciated by the public. Other than that, it's really the budget. So I'm teeing it up for Councilmember Maurer.
I just really enjoy being on the budget committee. It really sounds kind of nerdy, but it's like a real intimate look at what's going on in the city. So it's really cool. So when we're talking about the streetlight budget, then I remember, someone asked me about, could we have more dark sky street lights? So I bring it up and the public works director said, yeah, well, we can work on that. Like, yeah, that's great. And then there are these reflectors that they put on sign poles at street crossings and stoplights, and you don't notice them until you're driving at night. They're really bright. They really light up. And so I said, could we get some more of those, especially at crosswalks? So Vice Mayor Zollman agreed with me, and so they put $15,000 in the budget for that, and then the full council will vote on that. But it was pretty exciting to get that in the budget. And the other one was the fence at Willard Libby Park. It's really a deteriorating fence, and they were going to just take the whole thing out and remove it. And then this mom, she started a petition within like 48 hours. They had 300 signatures or something. So they scrapped the idea of taking the fence out. So we've got $20,000 into the budget for a fence, and then the Public Works Director is going to work with the Kiwanis or Rotary or find out if any of the nonprofit groups could help with putting that fence in. The other item is I asked the police department about could we remove the grass in the front, and they said yes, and they put $20,000. It's just an estimate of how much it would cost to remove the grass in the front of the police department. But so those were a couple of things, and those aren't guaranteed, but the full council will vote on those requests and changes. And there was one more item that I brought up, which has been brought to my attention, is the need for bike racks in town. And so I brought that up, talked to Public Works about bike racks, and what he said is it's within the budget, and he's talking to people about this. So I think that's the idea of getting some more bike racks in town is moving forward. So if you're interested in that subject, I encourage you to talk with Public Works Director Dante.
So I would add two items. Number one is that anyone who has an interest in particular projects that may or may not be funded by the council this coming fiscal year should attend the July 16 City Council meeting and/or submit written comments by email. The budget is being brought forward to the City Council. It's proposed, but if anyone has watched the City Council discussions in past budget years, you'll know what I mean when I say it's all on the table. When it comes to the City Council, it's amazing the changes that can happen in the midst of discussion. So please, if you have an interest in either supporting any of the items that are already being proposed there or in changing the outcome, do attend or send in an email message one way or another. It's super important. And do review the budget document and the rolling summary, which is available on the website, that shows the summary of all of the budget committee meetings. Really interesting. It's the highlights, and it really gives you a sense of what happened during these budget committee meetings. I'll turn it back over to Councilmember Maurer, but I wanted to make sure everyone is aware that our interim planning director is at the moment intending to end his term here very soon. And I think this might be the last Climate Action Committee meeting that you'll attend. Is that correct, David?
It could be.
Okay. Yes, well, crossing my fingers, I understand the could be, but just in case, want to make sure that we express our appreciation of his participation and support for us here. So I'll pass it on over.
Yeah, just a few more comments. So if you wanted to see this budget online and you can't find it, you can let me know. Just send me an email and I'll send you the link to the budget. But so as we went through this process, so I'm on the committee with Vice Mayor Zolman, and there were places where we agreed and there are places where we disagree. So part of the budget, it starts with a narrative, and that's about, I don't know, 15 pages long, 13 pages long. And within that, it'll say where we disagree. So anyway, participation is really wonderful from the public, and I think it can help council make decisions on this. But right now, it was predicted that our budget would be about 1.9 deficit, and it's 670,000 deficit, fully staffed. And anyway, I'm feeling pretty good about where we got to this. So, but we also could really use your input, your feedback, your review of this, because I think it does matter. It makes a difference when we're up there at the dais trying to make decisions about where, because there's an issue of a SAFE program. It's called SAFE. Petaluma's doing it. Runner Park, Cotati, Sonoma State is doing it. And I was in favor of this program, but it's $270,000. But then I found out there were startup costs. The startup costs were before a ban. It's another $180,000 for startup costs. So at that point, I just said, can't do that. I want to keep the fully staffed police staffed. And that's where the vice mayor and I disagreed. He wants the SAFE program, but not the staffing. So it might be that we do an ad hoc committee. So this is one of those issues where it's really helpful to get the public's feedback, especially through a climate lens. So yeah, thank you.
I live out in the county. I have a Sebastopol address. I live in the county. Are folks like me, are we able to chime in and make comments and suggestions, even though we don't live in the city limits?
For me, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
I would reinforce that. Yes, we're these council members. We understand that we're the catchment area for a larger West Sonoma County population. So yeah, always chime in. You may not live in the city limits, but you know people and you influence people within the city.
This is my city.
We know that. And then the other piece I'd add, just in order to underscore the importance of the discussion on July 16. From Councilmember Maurer's perspective, you heard her say that that the current projected deficit feels comfortable and that we are, quote, fully staffed. And I will tell you that from my perspective, as a separate council member, I look at our staffing and specifically the reduction in the GHD hours, which is Tony Bertolero, and that causes me great concern. So you'll see, just as an example, GHD is the engineering consultant that we use. So you'll see, just as an example, that's two perspectives. There will be a lot of discussion on July 16th, so please do weigh in if you can. Thanks.
Well, I think this is the moment to thank you guys for your service, especially that big notebook of service. And to definitely thank our interim planning director for the service and for being willing to dive in and come to all of our meetings as we have been bungling our way through figuring out all these changes and what we, what we're hoping for and what seems realistic as we move forward. So appreciate your participation and you're helping the city through this time, and providing support to our favorite people, John and Susie. So, Steve, go ahead.
First, I want to concur. Very much appreciate all your work. Just a quick budget item. Councilmember Maurer was able to pass on to me some information that I had requested from her some time ago about what is the added cost to the city for the Evergreen program. That's where Sonoma Clean Power, you pay 2.5 cents more per kilowatt hour for Evergreen versus the Clean Start program. So it's all local renewable power for Evergreen, where most of it is local and certainly a large percentage is renewable on the Clean Start. But Evergreen is better, and it costs $32,000 a year for the city. And I think we should look at it. That is a climate expenditure. Is it the highest and best use of a climate expenditure? I think that's open for discussion. There's another $13,000 a year.
The number again?
$32,000 a year. Is that correct? Over 12 accounts.
Well, Jeff Cyphers said that we have 75 accounts, and that the city pays 35 or 32,000 more than what we would pay if we were using Clean Start. So Clean Start is their basic level. It's about 55% renewable.
Right.
And then the Evergreen is 100% renewable, and that's what the city's using right now. So the city's paying 32,000 more to have that 100% renewable.
And that doesn't cover the electricity for water, which would probably double that 32,000. At least that's the way it was back in 2018 when it was set up. It only covers street lighting, the pool, the buildings, whatnot. Doesn't cover water conveyance. And then there's also another expenditure for the RCPA. And I think that's in the $13,000 a year realm. Each of the joint powers authorities from the different cities chip in. It's not a lot of money, but we should look at these monies as climate expenditures and think about them. I'm not advocating anything right now, just thinking about it.
Thank you, Steve. All right. Are we ready to move on to our regular agenda? I know I'm ready. It's after 4. Okay, let's move on. So working groups, reports for activities not on agenda. I think we're going to start with zero waste.
I didn't attend the last meeting, so if there's anything, but I do want to follow up after.
The Zero Waste Working Group continues to meet. We are connecting with a similar group in Windsor and are going to invite that representative from that group to join our next meeting in order to get some ideas on projects moving forward. There was a specific issue that came up for us during our last meeting, which is an interest in weighing in or otherwise getting involved in assessing the garbage contract process. So what we did in that arena was we asked that the consultant that is working on the garbage contract reach out directly to Michael Simonitis, who is on the Zero Waste Working Group, because he had some specific ideas that he wanted to contribute regarding the need to take into consideration the zero waste compliance and service aspects of any garbage company that submits a proposal. So that was our topic this time. Thank you.
I wanted to talk a little bit about how the city's doing with the zero waste ordinance. So since since
Are we-
COVID.
So are you talking about the preferred process
Yeah.
purchasing
Should-
or
should
the?
I wait, right?
Yeah. Oh, wait.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you. No, that's okay. I looked at you. Any other, I know I have a working group report from Joshua regarding the sequestration working group, and he needs volunteers for the fall dates, which I don't have on hand. Well, that would have been helpful. So if anyone knows the fall dates for the compost days, I don't know if he gave us those. He probably did. I didn't write them down. So he will need some help with those this fall. He's feeling a little bit too much weight on his shoulders. So if anyone's interested, please reach out to Joshua to support him in getting those compost events happening. Any other working groups have reports about anything that's not on our agenda?
Yeah,
Go.
so just real quick, so we discussed last meeting about having a table at the Gravenstein Apple Fair in some capacity. I talked to Ambrosia today about that. There is still that possibility. I also talked to Dory from the Climate Action and Resiliency Division of the Sonoma County. She's going to be out of town. There may or may not be staff from that group that's willing to do it. So I just wanted to get a temperature reading from anybody that's able and willing to do that, maybe one or both days if we could. I'm not, and also the Climate Action Resiliency Division would provide lots of resources for paperwork and some handouts, not obviously enough for the whole fair, but they would provide a lot of stuff. So if we want to just generally go with their theme about, energy scores and things like that, and being able to support people in making those decisions, that would be my basic proposal, and seeing if anybody else wants to.
Can you remind us what the dates are?
August 10th and 11th, Saturday and Sunday.
So should people reach out directly to you, Alex?
Maybe just a show of hands of who's interested in help and supporting. Okay.
I can probably help at least one day.
I'm thinking 2 might be a lot, but 1 might be a good just way. I don't know. We can discuss offline. Maybe I'll send an email to everybody interested, and we can finalize it from there.
As long as there's less than 7 people interested.
Saturdays would be the best. The most traffic is on Saturdays. So just.
Perfect. Any other working groups want to report for things not on the agenda?
Yeah, transportation. We meet twice a month, the day before this meeting and 2 weeks before the meeting. One thing came up that is not on the agenda, and that is that the Countywide Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee is the committee that advises on the active transportation plan. And the city has appointed Gavin Waters as a citizen to represent the community here. And we would like to invite Gavin to report on the meeting, which is coming up the 23rd of this month. So if in August we could invite him to report back on this committee and how it is going, we would appreciate it.
Okay, I'll reach out to you to clarify the agenda item title, but got it down.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks. Any other working groups want to report anything that's not on the agenda? And I'll just let you guys right now know that we're going to table the work plan review because we definitely do not have time. But we'll go on to Alex and the Sebastopol Municipal Building Energy Use item.
Yeah, real quick. It's just it came up when Phil and I were on the phone speaking with Dory about some other things I can't even remember at this point. But it came up that she was emailing, or you guys were emailing with one of their staff members about maybe some sort of energy audit or doing some stuff on the municipal buildings. I just wanted to know, we were just kind of getting a general gut check from you guys on how often that might happen, or if there's I'll reread the email that I sent to Kenna, but she just mentioned that there was some stuff that you guys were talking about in October of last year, and that kind of maybe the momentum fell off a little bit. So
Was it planning staff or was it building
I
department
believe it was
staff?
you.
Really? Okay. I'll have to be reminded
Is
of
there a
what that-
John Jay in another department of the city?
There's a John Jay in the city or county of Sonoma.
Oh, you know
So
what? Maybe it was an engineer.
There's Mario.
It could have been that too.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to circle the maybe. Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to see if we had any input or.
Sure. Yeah, just energy audit stuff is typically not a planning department thing. It may have, my name may have been on there as a intermediary between the appropriate department. So I'm not trying to deflect anything, but I know it sounds like that, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, it's such an apropos subject because here we are talking about the budget. We're talking about, our climate committee here, and it's really overly air conditioned here. I feel like, just budget wise and climate wise, what the heck?
So I guess the question, Alex, that I'm wanting to ask John is, who should you reach out
Yeah,
to
exactly.
to follow up?
Yeah, I guess really it was more just because we have you here and it's convenient. We were just following to see if there's any way we could support, or if there's any timeline on a regular like energy audit schedule, but like 5 years, 10 years, something like that. But we could, it's not like there's no real action item. I guess it was just trying to understand what
Yeah, I know that as part of our LOS report that we do every year, the Public Works Department includes an energy component for the city buildings that have solar. So that is something that will be coming to the council within the next couple of months. But I would have to reach out to the whatever department handles that energy audit stuff. So
Honestly, John, what about just having an email sent? You could send an email, Alex, to Mary Gurley, and I bet she'd send it in the right direction.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah, that could help.
That
I
might
think
just close
they
it
also
up.
they also wanted to relay that they were just available for support in any building stuff that we needed on the municipal side. So they're available as a resource. But anyway, just kind of understanding our impact on the building part of our climate action piece. So thank you.
Yeah, that's a great topic for us to be circling back to. It's actually climate action that we could take in at municipal level. So now, does anyone have anything else to say about that topic before we move on to Ambrosia? Including our public. Okay.
So I was asked to kind of go over the City of Sebastopol Zero Waste Ordinance and kind of see where we are as a community in our zero waste efforts. So effective August 2022, they updated the ordinance. And so before COVID, I should say, because it wasn't just me, but a lot of us were ramping up, and we were getting information out about, the styrofoam ban, plastic utensils, plastic bags of takeout food, and stuff like that. So what's been happening since we're back into COVID? So there was this long stretch of when folks were like, oh, we still can't use the metal because of contamination. They were only giving out plastic utensils. That's kind of going away again. But it took a long time. So it was like having to start from scratch all over again. And now I know that businesses here are doing a lot better, but I'm seeing in stores, grocery stores specifically, styrofoam is creeping back in. So, like for plates and the cups and other random things. Also plastic bags. I'm seeing a lot of plastic bags being sent out from restaurants. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that. I haven't really paid attention to styrofoam packaging coming out of restaurants. I don't know if anybody else has seen those. Like I said, things are looking better, but still, we kind of maybe need to reconvene and see if we can't get that jump started again.
So am I hearing that there needs to be more both public and business owner education on what the contents of the local ordinance are and kind of what the alternatives are?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't recall if the city of Sebastopol has any teeth in it, like fines or anything. I don't think we have anything like that. Maybe just social pressure. I don't know. But I can tell you on a recology side, if we're seeing, contamination in our carts, then we can take action. And I will, if I see styrofoam containers in their garbage, I know that they're in the restaurant, people are eating in with the styrofoam, right? So I can address things like that. Also, food waste in the garbage is another thing I get to take care of, but it's starting to have a big gray area now, and folks aren't really on that anymore. So, but the good news is events are getting so much better. Events, public events with like 10,000 people, it's going so much better. There's a lot of communication now, and that's part of our ordinance, our city ordinance for events, is they need to have some sort of greener or, speak to me about it. And I'm really involved with vendors and very, strict on the items that they can bring into the events. And it helps that I'm the president on the Chamber of Commerce for the Apple Blossom. So yeah, so I've set those rules pretty hard and steady there. But so yeah, the event situations are looking so good. So good. Yeah. That's just my little update.
That is great. And it sounds like maybe there's a window of opportunity for a community group or a student group or a high school class that might be interested in a project to maybe look at the local ordinance and do some community education. So we can keep that in our minds. Go ahead, Emmett.
Yeah, I was just wondering, you mentioned the plastic bags, and I was wondering if the city's ordinance covers plastic bags or if that's all covered under the county. And I noticed the same thing. There's like kind of the loophole of like reusable plastic bags, and if that's something that like there might be any role for the city in closing that loophole locally, at least. Don't know.
So I can tell you the loophole is actually, yeah, you were correct in saying reusable, but also if they take back, so we'll just say Safeway, if Safeway gives plastic bags as an option, and they have to be a certain gauge, they can't just be, a flimsy bag, that they have to take it back. And I know Safeway does backhaul their plastic bags, but Recology doesn't take them. But it's putting more plastic bags out there. Not everybody's gonna, bring them in. So I don't think the city has the capability of telling Safeway and Lucky to stop using those. But we do have that with, stores or, mom and pop places. And I know a lot of grocery stores have taken, like Whole Foods, they only use paper bags for grocery. They do have some plastic bags in their produce, but that's why they don't take back the plastic bags anymore. So, yeah.
So one comment I'll make is that in the city of Sebastopol, we do not have a code enforcement officer. And that would be the person who, for a lot of ordinance violations, would go out and enforce them. So whether or not it's written into our ordinances, in some cases, there are penalties written into our ordinances, but the fact of the matter is we haven't appointed anyone to go out and be that code enforcer. Occasionally, in some instances, our fire chief in the past has acted in that role, and where there's particular crimes involved, our police chief will, but it's really just social pressure, which actually is pretty effective in this town.
So I was wondering a couple of things. One, when you say some stores will take back the plastic bags, does that mean they reuse them for another customer? No. So they're basically just thrown away, probably.
No, not necessarily. What happens is they get baled in the back of the store. They have a huge baler. They use it for cardboard as well. And they bale it. And then when the truck comes to unload from the distribution center, those plastic bag bales will go back on that empty truck. And we call that backhauling.
Okay, so they get recycled. Okay, great. Thank you. And the other thing I was wondering about is I know that several places, including Whole Foods, when you go to the deli counter or get anything to go, they'll automatically put it into a plastic little container unless you request paper. And it seems to me like, is there any way we could add an ordinance to people can request the plastic, but it's not the given? I would love to see that because they're giving out a lot of plastic there.
All right. Anyone else? Questions? All right. So, oh, yeah.
So I don't know if this is a potential role for the committee to assist you in approaching businesses as committee members to say, here are the local requirements, and we're really hoping you can do what you can to meet those local requirements in real simple language. Oftentimes it's confusing to the merchants, confusing to the people out there that are buying the products. Then what container does it go in? And I know we all don't want to have more work, but I think it's one of those things that we can't expect Recology to do it all.
This is really a comment that's directed toward our appointee to the Zero Waste Sonoma Board, Sandra Maurer. In the past, Sloan Pagal, I think it was, partnered with the city of Sebastopol, with the Zero Waste Working Group, in order to put together packets that included signs and other informational, so kind of tent signs that went on the counters at restaurants and other informational pieces that assisted in getting that educational message out. So, there may be an opportunity to get Zero Waste Sonoma to partner with the city of Sebastopol to begin an education campaign.
I am also all for multiple groups on many levels working together as a form of efficiency and not recreating the wheel. So any way we can participate with them is good. And I'm going to reach out with Alex to help support you in this, because that goes along with the outreach part. And I'm super glad to hear about those events going so well. We only have just a little bit more work to do with some of our stores then.
So just to share really quick, this year's Apple Blossom, I had a huge success. Since 2019, the average has been about 40 yards of garbage, of waste that is collected at the Apple Blossom Festival. And this year, I got it down to 8 yards. So But yeah, and that's a lot of hard work. That's like, on the vendors and really putting your foot down. So, and that's our biggest event, and it represents Sebastopol. So yeah.
Are those statistics, measurements, metrics that we need to record, are they anywhere where we can find them regularly?
I mean, we would have that information through our event process at Recology, donation. So it's attainable. But yeah, I just know because I'm there.
Well, I want to just really acknowledge that you started working on this long before 2022 or 2020, and it's meaningful, the work that you personally and the teams that you've worked with have put in. It's a lot of our neighbors have helped you over the years, and just gratitude to everyone who's made such a big difference. And it sounds like we have another window of opportunity now to keep pushing that forward. So I'm going to move on to Sandy. Do you want to address the rights of nature? Do you want me to talk about it? Okay. I met with Sandy and Magic last week to talk about how we wanted to handle this issue, that there's a general plan includes rights of nature, and we have a group trying to come up with, enacting what that means. And so the plan for working on the ordinance is to come back to this committee with a more full presentation explaining what is this, why is it, what is the history, what is the hope, and how the process has gone and present that to this committee for feedback, and then present it when a new, I can't remember the name of the person that's going to be the planning and community development director.
Right.
When there's a community development director in place who's going to be the ongoing person, to give them that presentation that will contain the history and the purpose, and start a conversation that way when they're developing their priorities. And my understanding is that it's a pending item on the work plan currently.
If I could comment on this, John and I have looked at the drafts that have come forward, and as further work is done on the current draft, I think it would be really important to really look at what's currently in place in terms of things like the Endangered Species Act, CEQA, and many other provisions of law, federal, state, and local, that are applicable, to just kind of get a sense of what's out there currently and what is this ordinance addressing that isn't already being addressed. I think that's important. Another area that is important is in terms of enforcement. The mayor just mentioned a few minutes ago that the city does not have an official code enforcement officer. In reading this ordinance in its current form, there's a lot of ambiguity, I'll say, and a lot of opportunity for bringing forth issues, concerns, and to council, to staff, and suggesting enforcement. So I think what's in place currently, what is this addressing that's new and different? What would the enforcement tools be realistically for this community? And really trying to tighten it up so that it truly is effective and focused, and that the city is in a position really to enforce it. So some general comments.
That's really helpful. Thank you. I think the general theme was, instead of trying to take what we have right now and move it forward was to go back and do some stakeholder engagement and talk with the team that's going to be in place for permanently about how to move it, what's needed. Lisa, would you like to speak?
I didn't realize that was creating that. Now I know. Yeah, I also think that, oh, like this? Oh, like, okay. Yeah, I think before we spend a whole lot of time on this, I think we should be also looking at what are our priorities and what are the needs. Just because something's on the plan as a potential possible item, I don't necessarily think we need to say we've got to do this.
Well, I think the goal of the activist group that's been working on this for a long time, much like the zero waste movement had been working, I think their goal is to actually spend less time with this group on doing it and to ask for a review from this group and not take up more time from Climate Action Committee other than a request for a review of the presentation and comment, and not move it forward as an action item for this group. So that was just an update for you guys of kind of knowing what the plan is at this point. Do you feel like I'm capturing that correctly? Yeah. All right. Well, we seem to be catching up a little bit to our time here, thankfully. Zaino, you were going to report on our CPA.
Yeah, so Joshua and I are appointed to an advisory board of the Regional Climate Protection Authority, and we're meeting about every other month. Last time we met, we discussed a draft of the inventory of greenhouse gas emissions. And that draft was expanded and brought in front of the city or the board of directors yesterday. And I assume it was approved. So I would propose that this group, this committee, looks at this greenhouse gas emission in more detail, because it's kind of a benchmark of how we're doing in the county. And the report that was presented to the board of directors yesterday contained a breakdown by jurisdictions. So there's a part that pertains to Sebastopol. So I would like to see the Energy Committee, the Energy Working Group, the Transportation Working Group, and the Metrics Working Group to look at this and come back with some feedback and presentation on this inventory at a next meeting or in September or so.
Are there any nuggets you can give us from the presentation that you attended about what the contents of the inventory were for the city?
Say that again.
Can you share any of the information about what you learned about the greenhouse gas inventory for the city?
When you look at the numbers, the low-hanging fruits have been harvested 10 years ago. So the big reductions happened in the past, and things are stalling. And so we need to come up with some new ideas of how to deal with the emission that's coming out of the city, citizens and the city operations. So I feel that we have not really energized the population around this issue. We have energized the city, and city operation. But we have not really done any neighborhood by neighborhood energizing of the population to get to zero. And so the numbers are, to me, alarming in the sense that we're stalling. We're not making any progress.
So presumably this report is now publicly available or will be soon?
Yeah, it's online, yeah.
Oh, it's already available?
Yeah.
Oh, great. So we can send it out with our next packet?
Yeah, I have a link here that I can
Okay.
share.
Great. Anybody have questions for Zeno or comments? Thank you for attending those meetings on our behalf and of the city. Yeah.
I attended those meetings too, and I got to say that I didn't get the feeling of, we're not doing it, folks. We're nowhere near meeting what these goals are. And I gave them feedback at that meeting, like reading their document, it's very hard to tell. Are we really on track? How far out of track are we? And I'm hoping maybe the final documents had a little bit more detail on that. Maybe you know, Zeno, but oftentimes it feels like RCPA, this is their reason for being, is doing these inventory gas reports every few years. And it's a bit sad that's what passes for really doing much in the county, is to measure how bad it's getting and how we're not doing what we're doing. That's an important task, but I think we all hoped for more out of our CPA than that. I don't mean to denigrate their work, but we're never going to get there with that.
I appreciate the reports, and I hope that they do a better job. I like the work that you're doing, but for any metric, we need to measure in order to get better.
Right.
And I also struggle with the responsibilities for our CPA and card and everything like that, and hoping they can support us a little bit better with data and research, because that is their.
Well, I think that's true, but it's kind of political will, where we have the RENA numbers that say, hey, housing, each city, you're obligated to contribute towards the housing crisis. You have to do what you can, show what you're doing, and make improvements. There isn't an equivalent pressure on cities and counties to do the same with climate. There really isn't. And it's because they hold some sort of funding with the RENA numbers. There is no sword when it comes to climate, except we're all under it.
Did you get the feeling that they are trying to get these numbers? Like there's an effort made to get these numbers in a certain way? Or do you think it's just like they're going through some kind of motion? Like, how do you feel like the process is?
You have to be consistent in the way you gather numbers. Otherwise, the numbers don't jibe with each other over the years. And they do follow what's called the ICLEI protocols. I forget what the acronym stands for.
Sure.
So it goes back to 1990 baseline, and we show improvement from there, and all the measurement techniques are standardized, but that doesn't mean that they're super accurate, because a lot of it's based on these derivative transport
models. All of these have improved in the past year or two, like immensely. So the numbers in the past aren't really as good as they.
Yeah, we're better at capturing the data now. That's for sure.
Yeah, but do you feel like the RCPA, because I don't understand how well the RCPA is, or what they're even trying to do with us. I mean, should we put pressure on them or offer more support for, to the RCPA, or how can we better work with them to like make them effective,
I think offer more support is really, the metrics group has been meeting for quite a while, and I'll present some of that in an upcoming meeting. But I think we have something that we can really add and help with their efforts.
Well, the RCPA and the Transportation Authority have a board of directors,
Yep.
and that board is the responsible group. There's funding for transportation. Money is coming in constantly, but climate has to apply for its particular grants, and so the funding for climate is much more piecemeal, haphazard, and there's not a constant major fund climate.
Right.
But the board of directors is responsible. So we have a representative at the board. Every city has one. The
Right.
county has one, and these are the people that are responsible. I think the staff is well willing, and they try to do their best, but numbers are hard to get, and they tend to kind of greenwash the report a bit. Like they look back at 1990